The elevator door slid open with a soft ding, revealing Mark standing there, minding his own business. He was headed up to an important meeting, one that could lead to a promotion he dreamed about for years. The lobby of the hotel was busy, buzzing with people who each had their own stories and their own plans. As he stepped inside the elevator, the doors began to close, but then stopped. A hand shot in, preventing them from sealing shut. It was a woman, flustered and trying to catch her breath. Mark instinctively held the door open wider. She gasped, stepping quickly inside. No problem, he thought as he pressed the button for the floor. The elevator hummed softly and they both stood there, grasping onto the chilly metal rail. A hint of perfume filled the air, sweet and floral, creating a little bubble amidst the pressing crowd outside. They exchanged a polite smile. Mark couldn't help but notice how genuinely beautiful she was. Her dark hair fell smoothly over her shoulders, framing her face in a way that was both elegant and warm. She looked a little lost but also determined. That mix, a blend of vulnerability and strength, made him more curious about her. She asked, her voice light and friendly. "Going well, I hope," he replied. "Just grabbing my things from my boss," she said, glancing at her watch. Mark nodded. It was a common scenario in the fast-paced world they lived in. People constantly moved, finding new paths, aiming for greater heights. The elevator stopped on the 25th floor. A couple of people stepped in, their eyes glued to their phones, barely noticing Mark and the woman beside him. The woman, however, shifted slightly closer to him, the crowd making the space feel even tighter. "I'm Jenna, by the way," she said, breaking the ice. "Mark," he replied, feeling a slight heightening in his heart rate. Talking to someone new, especially someone like Jenna, made him feel alive. Before he could say more, the elevator jolted to a halt. A loud clang reverberated through the metal walls. The lights flickered for a moment, causing Jenna to gasp softly. Mark's heart raced. The other passengers glanced nervously at each other, murmurs filling the small space. Mark felt the tension rise, and he turned to Jenna. "It's probably just a glitch," she asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. "I know it's frustrating, but let's try to stay calm." He offered her a reassuring smile, hoping it worked. Minutes passed and the atmosphere grew heavier. They all stood in silence, listening to the hum of machinery and the faint echo of people in the lobby below. Jenna shifted again, looking a little more anxious. She asked, a nervous laughter escaping her lips. "Honestly, no," Mark admitted, cracking a joke to lighten the mood. Another smile broke through her tension. Mark nodded. She glanced again at the digital panel above them. A burst of honest laughter came from an older man beside them. "Believe me, it can feel eternity sometimes." Mark turned back to Jenna, suddenly wanting to peel back the layers of her life. She looked thoughtful. "I've been thinking about starting my own business." "Wow, that's brave," Mark said, admiring her courage. "Something with event planning," she replied, her eyes shining with excitement. "Turning special moments into lasting memories has always been my passion." Mark could feel that passion spilling over, and it swept him up in it. Just being in the elevator with her felt like a strange sort of fate, a nudge from the universe. Sometimes, when you least expect it, chances arrive when you don't even see them coming. But before he could reply, the lights flickered again and a faint grinding sound echoed. Then, out of nowhere, the doors suddenly opened. Jenna gasped again, and the four of them rushed out together, tumbling into the hallway. Mark's heart hammered, relief washing over him. They quickly stepped aside to let the surge of others pass. The hotel staff crowded together, earning a concerned air as they talked frantically into their headsets. Then it happened. Out of the corner of his eye, Mark saw a well-dressed man, a familiar face he recognized as Jenna's boss. He was pulling an unattended suitcase down the hallway. It had been left outside another room, and without hesitation, he began to walk away with it. Jenna called, her voice breaking through the noise. She rushed toward him, confusion written all over her face. Mark's brow furrowed. Jenna's expression turned to concern. "That's my luggage." The older man from the elevator turned around as if to help. "Excuse me, are you sure? I emailed him," he assured me, Jenna replied, rushing forward. Mark felt a spark of adrenaline surge through him. This wasn't just about a suitcase, it felt serious. There was a rhythm to Jenna's panic that was palpable, pulling him deeper into her emotions. As she approached her boss, her voice trembled but was strong. "Why are you taking my suitcase? I told you about this." The man paused for a second, looking back with feigned innocence. "Oh, this. I thought it was abandoned." His tone was dismissive and hurried. "No," Jenna shouted, her vulnerability surfacing like a jagged edge. Mark could see the mixture of frustration and disbelief on her face. He moved closer, feeling the knot in his stomach tightening. He asked, stepping in fully now. The boss turned to him, condescending, just someone who saw what happened back in there. Jenna's eyes darted back to Mark, searching for support. He could see the tears welling, and it struck him harder than a fist to the gut. He was ready to stand up for her, ready to fight against the injustice he felt. "Look," Mark began, "this is a simple misunderstanding. Let's just sort it out." The man, sensing the tension shift, straightened his tie and regained his bravado. "Listen, it's just luggage. I'll take care of it later," he said dismissively. Jenna snapped. "You're a great boss, but why does this feel so wrong? You can't just..." The air felt electric as they exchanged words, and around them, people began to take notice. Mark realized this was about much more than a suitcase. It was about respect, about power dynamics that made his heart race with empathy. "Jenna, I'll help you," Mark said, stepping forward. "We can," but before he could finish, the man took a quick step back. "You're wasting my time," he barked, the facade cracking for a moment. Mark felt the heat rise within him. This wasn't just a simple misunderstanding anymore. It felt like a twisted game of control. With a calm he didn't fully feel, he replied, "No one should be treated this way." Her boss hesitated, a tense silence hanging in the air. Jenna looked between the two of them, the fire igniting in her eyes. "You know what? I'm done being treated like this," she said finally. "Mark, let's report this." The moment felt surreal, tension reaching its peak. Finally, the boss scoffed and threw his hands up in defeat. "Fine, take the suitcase." With a shaking breath, Jenna reached for the suitcase and took it from him. A small victory shimmered in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to Mark, her relief palpable. The crowd dissipated, murmuring about the encounter they just witnessed, but for them, it felt like time stood still. At the moment, Jenna was no longer just a woman in an elevator. She was a warrior. Mark gave her a reassuring nod, feeling the bond that had formed amidst chaos. They stood there for a moment, holding her suitcase between them like a trophy of courage. Suddenly, the elevator door slid open again, and they both turned to each other, a silent understanding passing between them. "Seems like I owed you more than just a door hold today," Mark said, finally breaking the tension. Jenna chuckled softly. "No kidding, deal," he replied, his heart warming as he realized the journey was just beginning. Sometimes it takes being stuck in an elevator to find a connection, to discover the strength within others, and to understand that you're capable of standing up against what is wrong. And as they stepped into the elevator together, the doors closed behind them. A new chapter was just starting. The elevator doors opened just in time, but not before the rush of voices behind him filled the air with urgency. Mark tightened his grip on the handle of his briefcase, hesitating for a split second. What would happen if he let the doors close? He could easily slip away, avoiding the chaos building in the hotel lobby, but something made him hold the door instead. Came a breathless voice, and a woman rushed forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She slipped into the cabin just as the doors began their slow glide shut. "Thank you," she gasped, her smile a flash of brightness in the dim lighting. Mark returned her smile, the warm glow of connection igniting a flicker of curiosity in his mind. She looked familiar, but he couldn't place her. He asked, trying to fill the quiet as they started their ascent. She adjusted her hair, revealing a tiny, delicate earring. Mark couldn't help but be intrigued. "Yeah, I decided it's time for something new," she replied, determination shining through her eyes. "Good for you," he said, feeling a spark of admiration. He could sense her excitement, a tangible energy that wrapped around them both. As the elevator climbed, a strange jolt rattled through the car. A shudder ran through Mark's body, the sensation of stopping unexpectedly washing over him. The lights flickered, their dim glow reflecting confusion. Jenna asked, glancing nervously at the panel above them. "Probably just a glitch," he said, though uncertainty lodged itself in his throat. Mark leaned against the metal railing, trying to mask his concern. Beneath the surface, anxiety began to creep in. Suddenly, the doors creaked open. A man with a sharp suit and a polished demeanor stepped inside. Mark recognized him from the lobby, Jenna's boss. "Ah, fancy seeing you in here," the boss said, a tight smile stretching across his face. Before anyone could reply, the elevator shuddered again, its doors closing firmly. Mark eyed Jenna. She looked unsettled, and he sensed the tension radiating from her. This was more than just a casual meeting. There was an undercurrent of anxiety that didn't sit well. The elevator continued its slow ascent, and Mark felt a sense of responsibility rising inside him. He asked Jenna, genuinely curious about her future. Before she could answer, the elevator jolted again, and an awful grinding sound echoed around them. Mark's heart raced. He could see Jenna's unease growing, her fingers tapping nervously against her leg. "Oh great, we're definitely stuck now," Jenna said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's just a minor setback," he said in an attempt to ease the tension. As if on cue, the lights dimmed further, and for a moment, the elevator felt like it was holding its breath. Mark turned to her boss, trying to break the suffocating silence. "Exhausting," the boss said, his voice edged with a hint of disdain. Mark felt a chill at the words. He could see Jenna's smile falter, her chin lifting defiantly. "Thanks," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just stating the truth," her boss replied dismissively. In the small confines of the elevator, Mark noticed the palpable rift growing between them. Jenna seemed to shrink, the man's words clipping her wings. At that moment, an unspoken bond formed between Mark and Jenna, a shared determination to rise above the negativity. The elevator finally straightened itself, and the lights flickered back to life, but just as they did, the door slid open to the 20th floor. The boss stepped out first. "I have a meeting, don't keep me waiting," he said flatly, sneering at Jenna as he exited. Mark took a step toward the threshold, glancing back at Jenna. Jenna rolled her eyes, pushing a stray hair behind her ear. "Yeah, I think so." Just as they settled back in, the car suddenly lurched again. With a sickening thud, the elevator came to an abrupt stop. Mark muttered, annoyance creeping into his voice. Jenna started, but the frustration in her tone was cut short as the emergency light began to flash. "Okay, hold on," Mark said, focusing on the moment. She exclaimed, exasperated, "I have a meeting to get to." Panic flared in her eyes, but Mark saw something deeper, a yearning for freedom, a fight she wasn't willing to back down from. "Look, it's just a temporary holdup. You've got the strength to push through this," he said, trying to keep both their spirits up. Jenna's gaze softened, curiosity warming her eyes. "It's just clothes, and my portfolio. I really want to show my work at my new job." Mark could hear the passion in her voice. "They will," he said, leaning against the railing. She smiled slightly, the tension releasing a bit. "Thanks," and then it happened. The elevator jolted more violently than before, and suddenly the doors slid open again, revealing the lobby below. Mark glanced at her, unsure if the moment of chaos was over. "I have to get my suitcase," Jenna replied firmly, stepping quickly onto the lobby floor without hesitation. He followed her, feeling the chill in the air settle around them. In the lobby, the crowd had thinned. The atmosphere was still charged, but Mark could sense something different, urgency mixed with anticipation. He caught sight of Jenna's boss once more, his back turned as he marched away, dragging a suitcase behind him. Jenna shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mark's heart sank. He felt the fiery adrenaline igniting within him. He glanced at Jenna, whose expression was a mixture of disbelief and fury. Mark demanded, stepping forward. She called after him, her voice gaining strength as if she were reclaiming herself. The boss paused for a moment, his perfect posture cracked, though he feigned innocence. "What are you talking about, Jenna? This was left unclaimed." "Mister, you can't just take what's not yours," Mark interrupted, feeling the weight of the moment pressing upon him. Jenna stepped beside him, her resolve shining through. "That suitcase is mine." The boss turned slowly, anger flickered across his face. "Look, it's just luggage." "Not like this," Mark said, his voice steady, feet planted firmly on the ground. He had taken a stand, and he would not back down. Mark could see Jenna's heart race as she stepped closer to her boss. "This is beyond unacceptable. I trusted you," she said. The air grew heavy with tension as everyone in the lobby paused, glancing their way. The crowd gathered around them, captivated by the unfolding drama. Mark felt Jenna's hand brush against his briefly. She wasn't just fighting for a suitcase anymore. This was about dignity, respect, and reclaiming her identity. Mark said, his voice rising above the unfolding tension. Her boss turned back, holding his ground, but the defiance met resistance. His expression wavered. "I was just holding it for you all this time," he said, but the words lacked conviction. She exclaimed, rising to the challenge. "You can't keep what isn't yours. I'm leaving this company, and I refuse to be treated like this." There was a moment of silence, the crowd collectively holding its breath. Finally, her boss's facade cracked, a subtle twitch in his jaw revealing his discomfort. "Fine," he snapped, shoving the suitcase toward her. "Take it." Mark felt the release of tension as Jenna snatched the suitcase. The power shifted in the room. She stood taller than before, a warrior ready to take on the world. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking at Mark, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and gratitude. Mark felt a rush of pride. "You showed him." Her smile was brighter now, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "And I couldn't have done it without you right there." The world outside felt vibrant and alive, the sun spilling golden light over everything. Together, they stepped back into the world, leaving the elevator chaos behind. Jenna suggested, her heart lightening. "I'd love that," he replied, feeling an unexpected excitement rise within him. As they began to walk together, Mark realized that sometimes the most extraordinary moments come from the most unforeseen place, like an elevator ride that spirals into unexpected battles. And as Jenna laughed, the sound rolling like music through the air, he knew they had both taken one step closer to finding their freedom. Each word shared, every moment of courage ignited a spark, a connection that would change the course of their stories forever. The elevator door slid shut just as Mark pressed the button for his floor, the last of the lobby buzz fading into silence. But then he heard footsteps racing towards him. Without thinking, he hit the open button again. The door slid apart to reveal a woman rushing in, a mix of determination and urgency on her face. She gasped, her voice breathy and grateful. Her hair bounced with each hurried step, glinting under the fluorescent lights. Mark's eyes caught her bright smile, and for a moment everything else fell away. "No problem," he replied, trying not to stare. The air felt charged around them, and he couldn't help but notice the way she carried herself, like she was about to tackle something big. He asked, glancing at the digital floor numbers lighting up above them. "Just heading to meet my boss," she said, running her fingers through her hair, a hint of frustration flickering in her eyes. Mark could sense her anxiety. It was palpable in her tone. "That sounds intense." "Definitely," she replied, her expression shifting to something resembling hope and determination. Just then, the elevator shuddered, a harsh grinding sound echoing through the enclosed space. The lights flickered briefly, adding an element of unease. The sudden stop jolted them both, and Jenna, he had learned her name in their brief exchange, gripped the railing. she asked, eyes wide with surprise. Looks like it, he said, forcing a calmness into his voice. He could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just an elevator malfunction. It felt larger, like the universe had conspired to create an intersection between their lives. Next to them, an older couple exchanged nervous glances, and Mark could hear murmurs of anxiety. He turned back to Jenna, trying to ease both her spirits and his own. Hey, look at it this way. We have a minute to catch our breath before whatever's next. She chuckled softly, the nervousness slipping away momentarily. That's a good approach. Well, I'm really excited about the chance to create my own path. Sounds like you've got a vision, he said, admiring her passion. Event planning, she replied, her eyes lighting up. I love making celebrations, special birthdays, weddings, you name it. It's about crafting memories. As they spoke, the elevator jerked again and a young man stepped in, a new arrival who barely acknowledged them. The atmosphere shifted slightly, but Jenna didn't falter. She took a deep breath, visibly fortifying herself. I can't let uncertainty get to me, she admitted. Mark nodded, sensing an opportunity. She laughed lightly, but her eyes betrayed a deeper emotion, an eagerness tied to her future. He asked, intrigued. Images from events I've worked on, I want to show them my ideas, she said, her enthusiasm rejuvenating the conversation. I pour my heart into it. Mark admired her spirit. He thought about how often people played it safe, avoiding risks, clinging to the familiar. But Jenna was different. She was standing on the precipice, ready to leap. An unsettling creak jolted them from their conversation, and the elevator's lights sputtered again before dimming. The atmosphere grew heavy, thick with unspoken fears. She asked, concern creeping into her voice. Honestly, I have no idea, he admitted, feeling a rush of empathy. This was an unexpected moment, a strange intimacy born from a shared struggle. Just as he said that, the elevator lurched violently, and the lights flickered out completely for a heartbeat. Jenna gasped, and Mark reached for her hand instinctively. The warmth of her grip surprised him. Then suddenly, the lights shot back on, and the doors opened at the 22nd floor. Mark caught sight of her boss standing outside, flanked by two other employees. He was a stiff man, all sharp angles and slick hair, scanning the space with a demanding air. Jenna, he called, his voice booming across the hallway. Mark's heart sank. He knew this was not the greeting she wanted. Jenna's face paled as she stepped toward the door, anxiousness overtaking her excitement. Mark asked quietly, his voice steady despite the impending situation. More than ever, she replied, but the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. She bid him a quick smile and stepped out. Mark watched as she walked toward her boss, a storm brewing between them. There was no warmth in his demeanor, only an impatient frown. You're late again, he spouted, his tone sharp. Jenna straightened herself, determination firming her stance. The tension swirled as if everyone in the hallway held their breath. Mark stood just inside the elevator, a spectator caught in this moment of confrontation. Excuses, as always, her boss scoffed, turning to his colleagues. Jenna's face flushed, the sting of his words cutting deeper than any knife. A mix of anger and hurt flickered in her eyes, but as she opened her mouth, ready to speak up, a voice came from behind. Mark stepped forward, a feeling of bravery pushing him onward. Her boss turned, the surprise written all over his face. Just a guy holding an elevator door, Mark replied, steadying himself, unwilling to appear intimidated. Jenna blinked in surprise, her eyes wide, but there was a glimmer of hope in there too. Her boss asked, eyes narrowing, just trying to ensure that people are respected, Mark replied, grounding his stance. The hallway felt electric, silence stretching thin around them. Jenna looked from Mark to her boss, a mix of disbelief and gratitude washing over her features. Her boss's tone turned icy. This isn't your business. Mark shook his head, unyielding. It is my business when I see someone getting dumped on for no reason. Jenna's breathing steadied as she began to absorb the weight of his words. I shouldn't have to take this from you, she said, her voice now strong. Courage surged within her as she chose to reclaim her narrative. Jenna stood taller, the fire in her spirit ignited. I value my time and my efforts. If I'm not the right fit, that's okay. The boss's face grew dark with anger, but Mark could see the tide beginning to turn. Her confidence was a powerful weapon. It resonated through the air like electricity. You'll regret this, her boss warned, voice low. No, Jenna said softly but firmly. With that, she turned to Mark. In that moment, everything shifted. The anxiety that had wrapped around both of them dissolved, replaced with clarity and strength. Mark felt proud of her. He asked, knowing the earlier confrontation was still raw. She took a step forward, determination radiating from her, and Mark walked beside her, ready to support her every choice. As they made their way toward the exit, Jenna paused for a moment, her suitcase visible just ahead. I can't believe I told him off, she said, disbelief flashing across her face. Believe it, you were incredible, Mark said, a smile creeping across his face. As she retrieved her suitcase, Jenna turned to him, her eyes softening. I wouldn't have found that courage if you hadn't stood by me. I was just in the right place at the right time, Mark said, but deep down, he realized it had been much more than that. Sometimes life introduces you to moments that demand you confront the challenges before you with everything you've got. Walking together outside, they breathed in the fresh air, the weight of something profound settling between them, a shared journey that had just begun. Jenna asked, a genuine smile breaking through her serious resolve. I'd love that, Mark replied, heart racing. As they stepped into a new chapter, both of them felt the pulse of possibility, new paths unfolding, filled with laughter and connections ahead. In that moment, they were no longer defined by the confines of the elevator or her boss's words, but by the choices they made, the strength they found, and the bond they had built. The world felt expansive, inviting, waiting for them to make their mark. Together, both ready to face whatever came next. The elevator doors were about to close when Mark made the split-second decision to hold them open. He barely registered the pool of people flowing in and out of the hotel lobby, but something about her rushed footsteps caught his attention. A woman came barreling toward him, her face a mix of desperation and determination. She exclaimed as she slipped in, breathless. A hint of panic sparkled in her eyes. "No problem," he replied, watching as the doors settled behind her. They both turned to face the panel of buttons, and Mark felt a flicker of connection, two souls thrown together in a moment of urgency. "I'm running late for a meeting," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her words resonated with him. What kind of change was she facing? Whatever it was, there was something in her tone that made Mark want to know more. He glanced at the facade of calm she was trying to project, but the hint of unease was unmistakable. He asked, genuinely curious. "I'm meeting with my boss for a final catch-up," she explained, her expression slipping into something more thoughtful. "I'm leaving my job, really?" he asked, a slight thrill running through him at the thought of someone breaking free from the norm. "Exciting and terrifying all at once," she admitted, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I've been at this company for years." The elevator stopped at the 21st floor, and the doors slid open to reveal a corporate chaos, perfumed women in high heels, men in tailored suits rushing by. But Mark's eyes were glued to her. He could feel her vulnerability, her bravery. But just then the elevator jolted. The lights flickered, and a loud thump echoed in the small compartment. Jenna, he learned her name was, gripped the railing, her eyes wide. She breathed, her voice laced with apprehension. "We might be stuck," Mark said, trying to sound reassuring though his heart raced. The sudden jolt had stirred a palpable tension in the air, thickening it with uncertainty. "What, I can't be stuck," Jenna said, her anxiousness creeping up. The noise of the busy lobby faded into the background as the world outside felt distant. "Take a breath," Mark encouraged, feeling responsibility wash over him. "We'll be fine," but Jenna wasn't convinced. She shot him a tentative smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, revealing the storm brewing beneath the surface. Minutes passed, the anxiety hanging like a heavy shroud. Mark tried to keep up the conversation, asking about her plans for the new job, her dreams of event planning. But every time he saw the numbers flickering above their heads, time ticking away, he could feel her growing concern. "I just want to make a good impression," she said, her voice thick with unspoken fears. He asked, sensing the shift in her mood. He wanted to draw her away from the worry that had encased them both. She hesitated for a moment, almost shyly. "Photos of events I've coordinated," she explained. "Weddings, parties, moments I helped create." "That's powerful," Mark said, inspired by her ambition. Suddenly, the elevator jerked violently again. The lights fizzed once more, and Jenna gripped the railing harder. She asked frantically, "It's just a glitch," he said, though deep down they both knew it felt like more than that. Before he could finish his sentence, the doors opened, revealing the 22nd floor. A tall man in a sharp suit and a slick-back hairstyle stepped into the elevator, his presence commanding and somehow oppressive. Mark recognized him instantly as Jenna's boss. Her boss said, casting a glance at Mark before turning to Jenna, "I know." "This is my last meeting," Jenna replied, attempting to mask her growing anxiety with a nervous smile. Mark could see that nervous energy shifting in the air. Jenna's boss had a grating presence, making the space feel even tighter, but there was something in her, a spark that he felt compelled to support. As the elevator door slid shut, Mark felt a sense of urgency rising within him. He turned to Jenna, ready to offer her the courage to face this moment head-on. "You've got this," he said softly. Moment dissipated, the elevator lurched unexpectedly, and Mark's heart raced. The lights dimmed, then flickered, and the boss's brows furrowed with annoyance. He snapped, glancing at the panel. "Hurry it up." Mark shot a look at Jenna, who shifted nervously, and suddenly the elevator lurched again. The two people inside exchanged worried glances, wondering if this was it. Just as tension reached its peak, the elevator doors opened once more. They stepped into the lobby, but Mark didn't feel free. He watched as Jenna's boss moved quickly toward a nearby room. He shouted over his shoulder, impatience burning in his tone. Jenna looked momentarily lost, not ready to follow him into that storm. Mark felt it, the weight of the moment. He took a step toward her. "Hey, wait, I have to go to him," she began, but her words trailed off. "He's always like this." "You are prepared," Mark said, his gaze steady. "Just remember what you're worth, back him up with facts." Jenna looked up at him, a mix of fear and hope in her eyes. "I'll try, I don't know if I can take his criticism one more time." But before Mark could respond, he spotted her suitcase by the doors. They must have placed it there early. A realization dawned on him when he pointed it out. What about that? As they both turned to grab it, they noticed Jenna's boss was nowhere in sight. Instead, they saw another figure moving toward the suitcase, a tall man in a suit, someone Mark had never seen before. In an instant, he snatched the suitcase and began walking away. Jenna gasped. Mark's instincts kicked in. He shouted, rushing forward without thinking. The man paused but didn't turn back. Jenna was right behind Mark, eyes filled with disbelief. "What do you think you're doing?" The man continued to walk away, oblivious to their shouts. Mark called, frustration boiling within him. Finally, the man stopped, glancing back at them with a mix of irritation and confusion. "What? This was left unattended. I thought it was free game," he said nonchalantly. Jenna took a step forward, fire igniting in her spirit. "No, it's mine. I left it here for a reason." Mark felt Jenna's resolve hardening, and it struck him this was her moment to reclaim her voice, her space, and her belongings. The man smirked, clearly unimpressed. "I need this suitcase for a meeting." Without hesitating, Jenna crossed her arms. "I am not letting this go. That suitcase is not just a piece of luggage." The man scoffed, his condescending tone only fueling her anger. "It's worth everything," Mark interjected, stepping beside Jenna. "It's about dignity, respect." At that moment, the boss reappeared, his expression a mix of annoyance and disbelief as he caught sight of their standoff. He demanded. Jenna whipped around, her posture straightening, every ounce of confidence flowing through her. "This man took my suitcase." Her boss looked between them, then to the man dragging her suitcase away. The tension crackled like lightning in the air. Mark felt a renewed sense of strength in Jenna's demeanor. "Give it back," Jenna's boss ordered, a flicker of concern breaking through his otherwise domineering presence. The man hesitated, weighing his options. For a moment, everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he dropped the suitcase to the ground with a thud, losing whatever fight had ignited in him. "Fine, take it," he grumbled, stepping back. Jenna turned to Mark, disbelief written across her face. "Yeah, it did," Mark said, feeling triumphant as he picked up the suitcase, handing it back to her with a smile. "You found your voice." A wave of relief washed over Jenna, her shoulders relaxing as she clutched the suitcase to her chest. "I can't believe I stood up to him," she said, her tone oscillating between astonished and empowered. "You did against everything," Mark replied, feeling a shared thrill coursing through them. "Thank you for being there," she said, eyes shining. Mark shrugged lightly, but inside he felt like a part of something bigger. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Jenna looked around, her spirit rejuvenated. They had forged a bond amid the chaos, two strangers unearthing their strength. She asked, glancing at her boss, who looked ready to simmer down from his earlier heatedness. "Now I believe you set your own path," Mark said, adjusting his briefcase. Jenna's face lit up with surprise and delight. "That sounds great." They walked side by side out of the hotel, the sun spilling golden light over the pavement as the weight of the moment settled into the past. The chaotic elevator ride that had brought them together faded away into the background. Mark felt lighter, ready to embrace whatever came next, and as they stepped into the vibrant world outside, he knew this was just the beginning of a fresh chapter unfolding for both of them, fueled by connection, courage, and the promise of new adventures ahead. In a world where moments shift lives, they had found each other, and with every step, they were ready to explore the paths that lay ahead together. The elevator doors slid shut just as Mark pressed the button for his floor, cutting off the noise of the bustling lobby behind him. He leaned against the cool metal interior, letting out a soft sigh. It had been a long day filled with meetings and presentations, but before he could close his eyes and drift into thought, he heard hurried footsteps approaching. In a flash, the door slid back open and a woman rushed in, breathless and flustered. Her dark hair swayed wildly as she slipped inside just in time. She exclaimed, barely catching her breath. Mark noticed the look of desperation in her eyes, a flash of urgency that piqued his curiosity. "No problem," he replied, trying to gauge her frantic energy. She paused, glancing at the panel, willing the elevator to start moving. "I'm running late for a meeting with my boss. Last chance." "Sounds serious," Mark said, intrigued. Her expression shifted from panic to determination. "I'm leaving my job. Today's my last day, and I need to have this conversation right." Mark's interest piqued even more. Her urgency was palpable. "Everything I've worked for," she said, her voice a mixture of hope and dread. "Photos from events I've planned, weddings, corporate events, you name it." Something in her eyes, a burning light, caught Mark's attention. She had passion, a spark that made him want to explore her story further. Before he could ask more, the elevator lurched unexpectedly, jolting them both. Jenna asked, her voice rising as the lights flickered. "Probably just a minor issue," Mark reassured, though anxiety began to creep into his own chest. Time stretched in that confined space, and Jenna looked nervously up at the digital display. "What if we're stuck? I can't afford to be late for this meeting." "Take a breath," he said, trying to keep her calm. "Things will resolve." Minutes ticked by like hours as they stood there, silence enveloping them. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Jenna began to pace slightly, her heels clicking against the metal floor. "You don't understand," she said, a mix of frustration and panic in her voice. "I've invested years of my life into this company." Mark felt the tension building around her words. He could sense the emotional struggle she was facing, the fear of stepping into the unknown. "You have to believe in yourself," he said, his voice steady. "Easy for you to say," she shot back, but Mark could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "Then tell me what's at stake," he prompted gently. I want to create, she said, her voice softening. I've always dreamed of being an event planner, but I've spent so long in this corporate machine. The elevator suddenly jolted again, lights dimming momentarily before flickering back to life, but not before plunging them into a moment of darkness. Jenna gasped, stepping closer to Mark, and he felt a rush of adrenaline. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, Jenna said, her voice tight. Let's focus on getting out first, Mark suggested, scanning the panel. But as if in response, the elevator shuddered violently, and the lights flickered again. For a brief moment, both of them were enveloped in an unsettling silence. Mark could feel the weight of the impending doom, a mix of frustration and urgency that clung to the air. At that moment, the door slid open, revealing a flurry of activity on the 22nd floor. Before Mark could step out, they were joined by a sharply dressed man. Something about his presence felt authoritative, almost suffocating. Finally, the man said, turning to Jenna with an impatient frown. Sorry, Jenna began, catching herself as she scrambled for the right words. Enough, the man interrupted, glancing at Mark and then back at Jenna. Let's just move on. Mark held back a surge of anger. He could see Jenna's confidence fading under the weight of this man's condescension. She needs a moment, he said, stepping forward slightly, intending to defend her. The boss snapped, irritation creeping into his tone. I'm just someone who cares about this situation, Mark replied, not backing down. You can't treat her like that. The boss scoffed. She's had her chances. Jenna shot Mark a look, a mix of surprise and desperation. I just want to present my work, she said softly. Her resolve wavered as doubt washed over her. Mark felt his heartbeat accelerate. This was not just about a meeting anymore. It felt like they were at a crucial turning point. He turned to Jenna, determined to lend her the strength she needed. You've got this. Your work is good enough. Before they could wrap their heads around the chaos, the elevator jerked once more, and Mark glanced at the panel above. The numbers flickered as if teasing them. The boss grumbled, impatiently pushing past them toward the doors. As the door swung wide, Mark caught a fleeting glimpse of the lobby bustling with people, the energy crackling like electricity. Let's go, the boss said curtly, stepping out. Jenna called after him, her voice gaining strength at last. Mark turned and noticed it just outside the elevator, leaning against the wall like an abandoned promise, the very suitcase holding her dreams, but the boss was oblivious. He didn't even look back. Mark urged, stepping aside to let her through. Insisted, willing her to reclaim it. With newfound determination sparking in her eyes, Jenna pushed past Mark and rushed for the suitcase. In one swift moment, she grabbed the handle, lifting it triumphantly as if reclaiming not just her belongings but her agency. But before they could celebrate their small victory, Mark's heart sank when he saw the sharp-suited man pacing away. Jenna shouted after him, a hint of anger surfacing. The boss turned, his expression darkening. What's your problem now? But Mark wasn't about to let it slide. You can't treat her this way. The man clenched his jaws, irritation flashing across his face. I didn't ask for your opinion, he snapped back. Mark replied, feeling the adrenaline rush collaring his courage. The boss bellowed, his voice echoing through the lobby, drawing curious glances from nearby passersby. Mark stepped forward, feeling a surge of bravery. That's easy for you to say. You don't know what professionalism looks like. Jenna found her feet, her anger stirring, and she stepped beside Mark, voice steady. I refused to be insulted any longer. The atmosphere shifted. A growing crowd began to form as they realized something important was unfolding before them. Even Mark felt the change, energized by her strength. Her boss stared incredulously, realizing he was losing control of the narrative. This is ridiculous. You'll regret this, he spat. No, Jenna shot back, voice unwavering. I won't. The confidence in her words resonated through the air, igniting something powerful. The tide had turned, and Mark felt exhilarated by the moment. With every word she spoke, Jenna was reclaiming her story. An unexpected applause erupted from the crowd, their encouragement building around her like a warm shield. Someone shouted from the back, laughter carrying across the space. Fueled by newfound confidence, Jenna turned to Mark. I can do this, absolutely, Mark agreed, feeling the swell of pride. Taking a deep breath, Jenna focused on her boss. I've worked too hard to come this far. You didn't believe in me, and I don't need this negativity in my life anymore, she said firmly. Her boss's composure began to falter, and the discontent etched on his features told Mark that Jenna's words were hitting home. After all the dismissive remarks, Jenna had found the courage to stand tall. You're playing a dangerous game, the boss warned, though there was a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. No, you are, Jenna replied. At that moment, Mark felt the rush of adrenaline ripple through him. He turned to Jenna, his eyes reflecting deep admiration. She was ready to step into her power to let go of any remnants of doubt. As they exchanged glances, they both understood this was no longer just about a suitcase or an elevator ride. This was about taking back control, about having the courage to stand up against the barriers holding them back. As the crowd continued to rally around them, their spirited energy seemed to drown out the earlier tension. Mark felt exhilarated by the strength Jenna was drawing from everyone, propelling her forward. But at that moment, Jenna's boss lost whatever ground he still had. He snapped, rage shooting out like sparks. Mark's heart raced with anticipation as Jenna, standing squarely in front of him, suitcase clutched firmly in her grip, felt liberated. She held the narrative now. "Let's go," she said, turning on her heels, her heart filled with renewed energy. And as she walked away, the weight of the evening lifted from her shoulders. Mark called after her, catching pace with her. "More than ever," she replied, her eyes sparkling with newfound confidence. With every step, Jenna felt a weight drop from her shoulders, and behind them, Mark turned to see spectators whispering and talking among themselves. For the first time, she was moving forward without hesitation, leaving the shadows of her old life behind. As they stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. "This is freedom," Mark said, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the landscape shift before them. "Thank you for everything," Jenna said, her smile genuine. "No, you did that for yourself," Mark replied, feeling a rush of pride. Together, they walked into a future filled with possibilities, each heartbeat echoing with hope and new beginnings. In that drug of exchange, where strength met vulnerability, they both knew that sometimes, even in the most unexpected moments, it takes a shared journey to find the courage to change one's life. As they moved away from the chaos, laughter danced in the air, and in that moment they were no longer bound by their pasts, but firmly stepping towards the future together, ready to embrace whatever came next. The elevator doors were inching closed when Mark made a quick decision to hold them open. A woman rushed towards him, her heels clicking sharply against the polished hotel floor. She barely made it inside, breathless and a little flustered. She exclaimed, her voice a mixture of relief and urgency. "No problem," Mark replied, stealing a glance at her. She had striking features, dark hair pulled back, an expression that spoke volumes. He noticed the slight tremor in her hands. As the door slid shut behind her, he pressed the button for the lobby. "Yes," she said, eyes darting to the illuminated numbers above. "I'm late for a meeting with my boss." They exchanged glances, and Mark could feel a wave of empathy washing over him. He asked, hoping to ease her tension. "I'm leaving my job," she confessed, biting her lip as though she were weighing her next words. "Sounds like a big deal," he said, intrigued. "It is," she replied, her voice trembling just a bit. As the elevator began its descent, it jolted suddenly, causing Jenna, he learned her name through their brief exchange, to stumble slightly. She caught herself but instinctively grabbed the metal railing. She blurted, panic spreading across her face. "Just a glitch, I think," Mark said, trying to sound reassuring, though the sudden jolt had rattled him too. Minutes passed and the elevator stood eerily still. Silence enveloped them like a thick fog. Jenna's anxious energy intensified and Mark could feel it, a shared pulse of worry filling the confined space. "This can't be happening," she muttered. "I really can't afford to miss this meeting." Mark asked, glancing towards the bag resting at her feet. The urgency in her voice heightened. "It's everything I've worked for." "Hey," Mark said softly, "you haven't failed yet. You've still got time and you'll get out of here." A faint flicker of confidence crossed her features. "Thanks." Suddenly, the elevator lights flickered, plunging them briefly into darkness. Mark felt a wave of fear wash over him. Jenna gasped, gripping the railing tighter. She whispered, her voice trembling. "Just hold on a bit longer," he urged, trying to sound calm. Just then, the elevator jerked violently, and Mark could feel an unsettling tension rising around them. His heart raced as he glanced at Jenna, who was visibly shaken. "This is surreal," she said, her eyes wide. "Life is unpredictable," he replied, sensing that it wasn't just nerves but fear of the unknown. As if on cue, the doors opened with a loud ping. Mark's heart dropped as he saw a tall man on the other side, sharp-suited and imposing. He recognized him as Jenna's boss, someone who seemed to command the room with his presence. "Finally," he said, stepping into the elevator without waiting for a response. "Sorry," Jenna began, but the boss cut her off, turning his back to her. Before they could fully process what was happening, the elevator lurched again. Jenna stumbled slightly and Mark caught her arm to steady her. "Be careful," he said, the anger bubbling inside him. "I don't have time for any of this," her boss snapped, his impatient demeanor pushing Jenna further into the corner. Mark saw the vulnerability in Jenna's eyes and he couldn't hold back anymore. "Can't you see she's trying? This is her last day." The boss shot Mark a scathing look. "Someone who believes in treating people respectfully," Mark shot back, feeling adrenaline coursing through his veins. The boss turned back to Jenna. "You're wasting time." Mark could see Jenna's spirit wavering. Fear flickered in her gaze, and for a moment he feared she wouldn't find the strength to push back. But as if sensing the urgency of the moment, she straightened her posture. "I've put in years of hard work, and I deserve to be treated with respect," she said, her voice trembling but steady. Mark felt a surge of pride for her courage. It was like watching a light flicker to life, breaking through darkness. The elevator shook again, and in that moment tension thickened. Mark glanced at the panel, no movement. "Maybe we should get out of here," the boss proposed, stepping toward the door, but Jenna blocked his path. "No, I'm not going to let you walk away without giving me the respect I deserve," she said firmly. He snarled, but Mark could see uncertainty surfacing in the boss's demeanor. "Not a game, my life," she shot back. "You think you can dictate how I feel?" For a fleeting moment, the boss looked taken aback. It felt like the world around them had grown lighter, filled with a new kind of energy. Suddenly, the elevator lurched again, jolting them all, and this time the lights flickered ominously. Jenna asked, concern creeping back into her voice. "I don't know," Mark admitted, trying to mask his own unease. The atmosphere shifted as their boss fished his phone from his pocket, mumbling something under his breath. Mark could feel Jenna's tension simmering just beneath the surface. "This is unacceptable," her boss muttered while tapping furiously on his phone. "Maybe you should think about what you're doing to your employees," Mark snapped, emboldened. The realization hit the boss hard. He straightened up, removing himself from the wall where he had been leaning, finally acknowledging the two of them. "You don't get to lecture me," he said, his bravado faltering just a little. "I'm not lecturing you," Mark said. Jenna looked at Mark, and in that instant, something shifted within her. "That's right," she said, gaining confidence. "I've earned my place here." The boss shifted uncomfortably, his bravado cracking ever so slightly. "No, I'm making a choice," Jenna shot back, "choosing my value over your opinion." The elevator shuddered one last time, finally coming to life as the panel illuminated their descent. "The lobby," Mark announced, feeling like they were on the brink of something bigger. Just then, the elevator doors swung open, revealing the busy lobby full of people. Everyone was oblivious to the storm that had just unfolded inside the steel box. The boss stepped out first, exuding his signature confidence, but the moment he did, Mark and Jenna stopped at the elevator's edge. Jenna called out, her voice rising above the noise. Without thinking, Mark turned to the suited man. "She left it behind," he said, shrugging it off. Mark's heart raced when he saw Jenna's suitcase left by the doors. It felt like an anchor that needed to be reclaimed, her own tether to the future. "Go get it," Mark urged her, feeling the weight of their confrontation turning the tide. The boss barked, disbelief etched across his face. "Yes," Jenna shot back, her determination igniting once more. "Fine. Grab it, but don't expect anything from me now," her boss mumbled, stepping away as if he was already done with her. Mark watched as Jenna reached for the suitcase, and to his surprise, she felt lighter with each move. It became more than just luggage, it was a symbol of her journey. "Thank you for standing up for me," she said, turning to Mark, her face aflame with a mix of relief and adrenaline. "Sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us," Mark replied, feeling a rush of connection. As Jenna hugged the suitcase close to her, the world outside felt electric. The atmosphere crackled, and they both knew an important chapter was ending, but beautifully another was beginning. Jenna asked, her smile breaking through the chaos. "Wherever you want," Mark replied, his heart swelling at the thought of embarking on a new journey. "Let's find a place to celebrate," she said, taking a step forward. With newfound confidence, she led their way through the crowd. Around them, life moved as if they had just unshackled themselves. The world felt wide open again, full of possibilities and challenges waiting to be embraced. Every step brought them closer to freedom, his heart racing alongside hers. In that moment, Mark realized they were no longer just two strangers in an elevator, but allies in a world of uncertainty, each ready to face the next chapter and all it had to offer. As they walked away, ready for new beginnings, both of them understood they had found courage through connection. They had faced the storm together and emerged stronger, forged by moments that defined not only a day but their futures. The elevator doors began to close, but Mark's instincts kicked in. He reached out, stopping the doors just in time. A woman rushed in, a flurry of movement and energy, her breath coming in quick gasps. She exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency, eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. Mark held the door open as a wave of perfume enveloped him, a fleeting moment of connection igniting curiosity within. "No problem," he replied, taking a step back so she could catch her breath. "I'm just trying to make it to a meeting," she said, her eyes darting to the button panel as the elevator began to rise. He asked, intrigued by the spark in her tone. With a hesitant smile, she replied, "I'm meeting my boss for my exit interview." "Oh wow, that's a big step," he said, feeling an unexpected wave of admiration wash over him. "Exciting and terrifying," she admitted, rubbing her hands together nervously. As the elevator climbed, a sudden jolt caught them both off guard. The lights flickered and the entire compartment shuddered. Jenna, he'd learned her name in that fleeting moment, clutched the railing, her eyes wide with anxiety. She gasped. "Just a glitch," Mark replied, although he could feel his own heartbeat quickening. "Not now, not today," she murmured, panic creeping into her voice. "I can't be stuck," Mark asked, glancing at the suitcase resting at her feet. She said, her voice rising in urgency. "It's everything I've worked for. A suit for your future," Mark said with a reassuring smile, trying to ground her frantic energy. "You've got this." "Easier said than done," she replied, taking a deep breath, "but you're right. I can't let this moment slip away." As they spoke, a tension settled between them, thickening the air around them. Minutes passed, each second stretching as if they were both trapped in a time warp. Jenna tried to calm herself, but Mark could see her anxiety bubbling just beneath the surface. He asked, hoping to shift her focus. "Yeah," she said, her pulse steadying just a bit as she spoke. "I've coordinated weddings, corporate events, and parties, but this job, it's felt like a cage at times." "Sometimes you have to leap," Mark replied, feeling the depth of her struggle. Suddenly, the elevator lurched again and the lights flickered ominously. Jenna asked, gripping the railing tighter, but before Mark could offer a comforting word, the doors slid open abruptly. They both turned to see a sharply dressed man standing there, his presence imposing. "There you are," he barked, stepping into the elevator without waiting for a reply. Jenna's shoulders sagged as he moved past her, the tension in her posture returning. "I just got stuck," she explained. "I don't care," the boss snapped, glaring at her. "We need to move." Mark felt a jolt of protectiveness surge through him. This wasn't just a meeting, it was Jenna's moment. The boss turned, eyes narrowing. "Someone who cares about treating people with respect," Mark replied confidently. "Respect, this is corporate," the boss retorted, dismissing him with a wave of his hand. "You two can chat in the lobby." Jenna's expression faltered, caught between frustration and desperation. Mark could see the flicker of hope she had been nurturing start to dim under her boss's heavy-handed demeanor. Just as Mark was about to speak again, the elevator jolted violently, throwing them all off balance. Mark instinctively shifted closer to Jenna, ready to catch her if she stumbled. The boss said sharply, regaining his balance. Jenna took a deep breath, a flash of courage breaking through the fear etched on her face. "I'm tired of being treated like I'm not important," she said, her voice steadier now. "I've put years of effort into this job." The boss raised an eyebrow, but for the first time he seemed to hesitate. Mark felt Jenna's resolve harden. "No." The air crackled with tension as they continued to ascend. Mark could sense the crowd outside growing restless, but inside the elevator it felt like something was about to snap. The lights flickered yet again and Jenna sent Mark a sideways glance. "Then we'll find a way out together," he assured her. Before they could continue, the elevator jolted one last time and the doors creaked open. They stumbled into the lobby, where the bustling world outside felt a million miles away. The boss barked, stepping out before Jenna could gather herself. Jenna shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mark felt a pulse of urgency. He pointed, spotting the suitcase leaning against the wall, waiting to be claimed. Her boss shot a look back at them, irritation flashing in his eyes. He snapped, clearly losing patience. Jenna rushed forward, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. It felt like reclaiming a piece of her identity. "You can't just walk away from this," she said, the determination in her voice resonating. Suddenly, the boss turned back, surprise etched across his face as he approached. He demanded, "I'm walking away from this job and you," Jenna stated firmly, her gaze unwavering. Mark stepped up beside her, ready to back her up. "She's right," the boss shot back, clearly floundering. Mark felt the tide shifting. "Actually, I have a stake in it." Their eyes locked, and for a moment it almost felt like a standoff. Jenna's chest was rising and falling with intensity as she took a step forward, her suitcase firmly in hand. "I refuse to be undervalued anymore," she said, her voice ringing with strength. Jenna's boss looked momentarily stunned, caught off guard by her unwavering resolve. For so long he had held all the power, but now the balance was shifting. "I'll tell you what," Jenna continued, determination painted across her face. "I'll take my chances in the world beyond this company." Mark felt a swell of pride fill him. This was more than a confrontation. This was about reclaiming her narrative, asserting her worth, and as they stood there, something remarkable happened. The people in the lobby began to take notice, their heads slowly turning toward the unfolding scene. Whispers and murmurs rippled like waves through the crowd. Someone clapped once and others quickly followed suit, echoing Jenna's courage. One voice cheered, and that burst of support fueled Jenna's fire. "Thank you," Jenna said, glancing back at Mark, her heart racing. "Believe it," Mark replied, feeling an electric energy around them. Her boss shouted, feeling the tide turning. "You won't succeed without this company. You'll regret this day," he warned, backing away. "No, I won't," Jenna declared firmly, the applause continuing to surge around her. With her suitcase clutched firmly in her grasp, she started to walk triumphantly toward the exit, the applause echoing in her ears. Mark followed close behind, a smile spreading across his face as he felt the crowd's support swell around them. He asked, their footsteps echoing in sync on the polished floor. "Anywhere but here," Jenna said, laughter lighting her features. "Then let's celebrate that," he said, feeling an excitement bubbling up inside him. As they stepped out into the world, the sun hit their faces, warming them as a sense of possibility opened up before them. They were not just two strangers in an elevator anymore. They were allies on a journey toward new beginnings together. In that moment, everything shifted. They had faced the whirlwind, reclaimed what was rightfully theirs, and emerged victorious. Jenna took a deep breath, the weight of the situation sliding off her shoulders. "Thank you for everything," she said as they walked side by side, their conversation flowing freely. Mark shrugged, feeling a sense of warmth bloom within. And as they strolled away from the chaos, they both understood that life had a way of testing us, forcing us to confront our fears and reclaim our truths. They had fought that battle together and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Through the sunlight and laughter, Mark and Jenna stepped into their futures bold, confident, and irrevocably changed by the unexpected journey they had taken together. The elevator doors were almost closed when Mark made a split-second decision to hold them open. The faint sound of heels clicking against the marble floor echoed loudly in the quiet hotel lobby. A woman rushed in just as the doors were about to shut completely, her eyes wide with urgency. Her breath came out in quick bursts. The relief on her face was palpable, and there was something magnetic about her, a spark that drew Mark in. "No problem," he said, stepping back as the door slid shut. He pressed the button for the top floor, his curiosity piqued by her visible distress. "Yes, very," she retorted, adjusting her purse nervously. "Leaving? That's a big move," Mark replied, trying to keep the conversation flowing, sensing that her anxiety ran deeper than she let on. "Yeah, I've been at this job for 4 years." "It's time for something new," she said, her voice steadying a bit, but the tension still lingered. He prodded, genuinely intrigued. He could see the fire in her eyes. She wasn't just leaving, she was on the verge of something important. She took a deep breath, glancing at the digital display above them. "I've worked hard on my portfolio." Mark nodded, feeling an unexpected rush of empathy. "You'll do great, thanks," she replied, a flicker of hope lighting up her expression for just a moment. But before the brief moment of connection could solidify, the elevator jolted, throwing them both off balance. The lights flickered ominously, causing Jenna, the name Mark had just learned, to grab the metal railing for support. She asked, her voice rising. "Just a glitch," Mark said with an attempt at reassurance, but deep inside he felt a knot tightening. Seconds turned into what felt like minutes, the air thickening with tension. Jenna was visibly anxious, her fingers tapping against her thigh. Mark could sense the storm brewing inside her. Was it fear or anticipation? She asked, her eyes now wide with disbelief. "I'm sure it's just a temporary thing," he said, though the hint of uncertainty in his own voice betrayed him. He could feel the weight of the moment settling around them, intensifying with every passing second. "Right now I just want to make this meeting work," Jenna said, her voice tight. Mark asked, sensing an opportunity to help her refocus. "Photos of events I've coordinated," she explained, the hint of pride creeping back into her voice. "Weddings, corporate functions, everything I've poured my heart into." Mark could see the passion bubbling inside her, a fierceness that shone through her worry. "You're not just leaving, you're embracing something new." Suddenly the elevator lurched again, and everything felt like it was on the brink of chaos. The lights flickered more insistently this time, and Jenna gasped. "Let's not go there yet," Mark replied, trying to keep his own fears in check. Just as they exchanged uneasy glances, the elevator doors opened with a loud ding. The sudden influx of light revealed the 22nd floor, where a tall man in a sharp suit stood waiting, exuding an air of impatience. He barked as the two of them stepped into the crowded hallway. Jenna's shoulders slumped, and Mark could see her excitement drain away in an instant. "I got stuck," Jenna stammered, trying to explain. The boss replied, annoyance radiating from him. Mark felt the urge to intervene. He interjected, trying to stand up for her, but the boss dismissed him. He turned to Jenna, his tone hardening. Suddenly, the elevator jolted again, surprising everyone inside. Mark quickly stepped closer to Jenna, seeking to provide some comfort, but the boss seemed unfazed. The boss barked, his voice cutting through the tension. Jenna hesitated, glancing back at Mark, her uncertainty palpable. Mark sensed that if she didn't speak up now, her chance would slip away forever. "Actually, I need to grab my suitcase first," she said, reclaiming her voice. Her boss turned, incredulous. "Your suitcase?" she fired back, her voice steadying. "It has my portfolio in it, and I deserve to present it." Mark felt a surge of pride for Jenna. Her courage was catching. "Let's go," her boss insisted, already moving away, but Jenna stood her ground. "No, I'm not letting this go. It's not just a suitcase. It represents my hard work and accomplishments." Jenna's boss sighed, obviously annoyed. "You think you're making a point," Jenna said, her determination spilling over. "I've spent too long regretting the fear that's held me back." In that moment, the elevator doors swung shut around them again, leaving the atmosphere charged. Mark could feel the shifting energy, and Jenna's resolve became infectious. Suddenly, the doors opened again, and the crowd outside seemed to hold its collective breath. Mark watched as Jenna grabbed her suitcase, the weight of her dreams hanging in the balance. "Let's see how far you really want to push this," her boss said, stepping forward as if to intimidate her. Jenna shot back, adrenaline rushing through her veins. Before they could react, their boss seized the suitcase from Jenna, yanking it away with surprising force. Mark felt a rush of anger surge within him. He shouted, stepping forward ready to intervene, but the boss wouldn't let go. "No, it's not," Mark exclaimed, feeling his heart race as Jenna darted forward, trying to reclaim her suitcase. In that chaotic moment, Jenna's boss swung it out of reach. Jenna froze for a moment, her world tilting, but then she took a deep breath, her eyes steeling. "You think you can erase my hard work?" Mark shouted, emboldened. Jenna stepped closer, her voice simmering with intensity. "It's not just about getting my suitcase back, it's about my identity, my voice." Amidst the crowd's mounting tension, Mark felt the pulse of urgency. Something was about to break, and he could feel the tide shifting. Jenna insisted, trying to match the intensity of her boss. "I'll take it, I'll show you just how invaluable you truly are," the boss mocked, but Jenna stood her ground, a titan of resolve. Mark interjected, "You're better than this." Jenna took a deep breath, the chaos swirling around them. "My future is worth fighting for," she declared. With renewed determination, Jenna lunged for her suitcase. Their eyes locked for a moment, and in that moment something clicked. She wasn't just fighting for the suitcase, she was fighting for herself. Suddenly, in an unexpected moment of clarity, the boss faltered, confusion creeping onto his face. "You think you'll just walk away from this?" But Jenna's fierce demeanor cracked through the facade. "No, I'll thrive." The crowd began to murmur, drawn in by the raw emotion pouring from Jenna. Mark stepped forward, ready to support her in every way. At once, the elevator doors reopened again, and a rush of fresh air seemed to invigorate Jenna. With a fierce resolve, she reached for her suitcase, reclaiming it from her boss's grasp. She shouted, the crowd erupting into applause around her. Mark felt a rush of exhilaration. She had done it, she had taken her stand. Together, they stepped forward, arms linked as they prepared to face whatever came next. But just as they stepped outside, a loud voice called from behind them, halting them in their tracks. "You think this is over?" With that, the world around them shifted, the weight of everything hanging in the air, a cliffhanger of choice, consequence, and the unknown. Mark could feel the adrenaline coursing through him as they stood at the precipice of a new beginning, ready to take on whatever awaited them together.